not going to go through the calculations, but you see this point right here below the trend line? You think that residual will be positive or negative?
Negative.
Negative, because it's indicating that the actual value is below the trend line, okay? But now we need context to this, right? This is the actual life expectancy. This is the predicted life expectancy. So the actual life expectancy is how much more than or less than? First off, is it more or less than predicted? It's more. So the actual life expectancy is 3.55.
More.
Well, more.
It is more, but what more? 3.55 what?
Years.
It's years. The actual life expectancy is 3.55 years
More.
more
Than that prediction.
than the predicted, right? Now, I'm about to write it up on the board so that you can write it down there. I will also point this out. Is that the residual for everywhere on that line? It's only for 1950, right? So in 1950, start with your independent variable. The actual life expectancy is 3.55 what? Years. Years. What after that? More than the predicted. See you, Kaya. Ethan, I want to ask you a question. Why do we know that it's 3.55 years more than the predicted? Why do we know that the average life expectancy is more than the predicted? Let Ethan. You're not sure? Okay. And so I didn't know that you didn't know, but I do want to point this out. If you're in the boat like Ethan and you're not sure why it's more, what should you be doing right now?
Ask a question.
You should be asking a question. Because here's the thing, even if you take a note, if you don't know why, is it going to magically pop in your head if you write down notes? No. Hey guys, part of your active collaboration grade is based on you what? Asking questions. Okay? So, can anyone then explain why we know that the actual is more than the predicted? Okay. Okay, it's not just because it's prediction, Maddie. Okay, so one, we know it's more because the actual point is above the predicted, right? There's another reason why we know this though. Thomas, you know? Anybody know? It's not about the equation. Remember how we had to calculate the residual doing the actual value minus the predicted? Okay, but it's written on the board, and it's on the paper, that a residual is the actual value minus the predicted value.
Oh, we subtracted.
Well, we subtracted, and the difference was, hey guys, right here, the difference was what? What kind of number is this? Positive. Because the residual was positive, that meant that the actual was more than the predicted. We just said it a second ago. Here, when the actual is less than the predicted, what's the residual going to be? It's going to be a negative. So because the residual was positive, we knew it had to be more than. Right? Ethan, if the residual had been negative, would it have been more than or less than? Exactly. So when the residual is positive, we know that the actual is more than, and when the residual is negative, we know that the actual is less than the predicted. That's how we know that information, because we're finding the difference between them. Okay? So if you weren't sure about that, it's more than because residual is positive. Okay? So, try answering questions 3 and 4 within your small groups based on the whole class discussion we just had. We'll come back together and answer in a second.
Pretty much.
Alright. I should see answers down for 3 and 4. We're going to go over them in just a second. Make sure you practice justifying. Practice justifying. That would help you think about it better. Right? See that equation right there, right? The equation that, so first off, we're talking about that was 50. On my equation, I think it was 0.269 times x minus 460. I think that might be right. And so we're talking about year 1950. Right, so it's equal to the year in x, not the So you might have had a different predicted value because you used a different equation. Okay. Okay. So if a data point is above the regression line, is the value of the residual positive or negative? Okay. So a lot of us knew instantly, because I literally had just told you that it's positive. But why is it positive? How could we show that clearly? Raise your hands, please. The first one who raised their hand was Maddie. Maddie, what you got? Say again. Right, and so I told you that, but how do we know that, Thomas?
Because it's over the prediction.
Okay, so, and here's, you could do even a quick little sketch, right? So, I'm just making up points, right? But let's say I look at this right here. And here's a point. Right, I just made up some points, I drew a trend line through it. You see how that value right there is above? So if I take a bigger number and I subtract a smaller number, am I going to get a positive or a negative? A positive. So if the point is above the regression line, the value of the residual is positive. So, positive, bigger, minus smaller, right, equals positive. All right, I'll get that in a second. And so what would we want to say for the one below that, the question below?
It's negative.
It's negative.
Negative.
Right, so if it's below, notice here, right here, you see that point? So is that number bigger or smaller than the predicted? It's smaller, so if I take a smaller number and I subtract a bigger number, it becomes negative. Okay, so negative here. Right? Smaller minus bigger is negative. You're in high school. If you have to sit on your own, you will. You're not doing anything. That's the problem. I'm trying to help you learn. You're not even on the paper that we're working with, dude. You're busy trying to mess with her. Caitlin, was he trying to mess with you just then? Exactly. It's none of her business. She's trying to be nice to you. I ignored it when you were trying to bump the calculator around before she had to pick the calculator up because you were messing with it. Then you trying to hit her with the pencil or hit the calculator with the pencil was the last straw, dude. You're in high school. What are your questions before we continue? All right. So here's, well, let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to collect the files in just a second, but I want you to go ahead and start on this, right? A least squares regression line. When I said LSRL before, any guesses what I was talking about? Regression. Okay? When you look here, what do you see at the bottom? It says year. Sorry. So if I were to add all these squares up, right? The least squares regression means that the sum of those squares is going to be the least. The sum of those squares is going to be the least. So, move that line around. I'll tell you when to pack up. It's not yet. Move that line around to start trying to minimize those squares. I will collect the file and send it back out tomorrow. So hold on to it. Let's pick up our calculator, Wesley.
Good afternoon, Professor. The volleyball team will host more games tomorrow at 5:30. Also, the varsity three-month program will have their workshop this Friday from 3:30 to 4:30 in the construction area. I had a cramp while I was watching. That was great. We had to continue watching.
Alright, you can go ahead and pack up. We will finish with this tomorrow. Can you grab that calculator?
I said what I said. He ain't help me.
You got it, great. You got it. That sounds rough.
He said that's a personal problem. He just said that's a personal problem. He just said it's a personal problem. Personal.
Alright, we have not gotten far enough to have a homework assignment, so there is none yet. Excuse me. Oh, yeah, you can go. No. Listen and stop talking. We will have a homework assignment coming up. Guys, we have got to focus. We're not putting in our best thinking right now, and we are losing lots of time because some of us are not actively engaged. We got to step it up for some of us. Y'all are capable of a lot. Come in the right way to work and to learn and to grow. Okay? When that bell rings, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Come on, Lee.
Then you're gonna walk. You know what's what are you supposed to be doing? When have I ever said that taking notes is all you're supposed to be doing? One, you're not even taking notes. Two, you're not talking about the math in the whole class discussion and the small group discussion. You're not doing any of the things I asked you to do. Or learning is being affected, dude. Have a good one, Jerry.